Imagine lying in a doctor's consultation, being told you might have cancer, tumors so large they've taken over your entire breast, and the person who is supposed to love you unconditionally looks you dead in the eye and calls it ridiculous. That's not a movie scene. That's Sharon Stone's real life. And when it happened, she made one decision that ended her marriage on the spot, not dramatically, not with a screaming fight, just quietly, coldly, permanently. Today, we're diving into the story she just revealed on a podcast. And trust me, by the end of this, you'll understand exactly why she never looked back. To understand the full weight of this story, you need to go back to the early 2000s. Sharon Stone was at the peak of her cultural relevance. Basic Instinct had already made her a legend. Casino had proven she was more than a sex symbol. She was a serious actress with an Oscar nomination. She had fame, money, and a marriage to San Francisco Chronicle editor Phil Bronstein. From the outside, her life looked almost perfect. But something terrifying was happening inside her body. She discovered tumors in her breasts, and we're not talking about small, easily dismissible lumps. One tumor was bigger than her entire left breast. Her doctor was so concerned that he came to her home, which already tells you how serious this was, and gave her a direct recommendation, a bilateral mastectomy. Both breasts removed, because in his experience, tumors that advanced were almost always malignant before they even went in. This wasn't a let's monitor it situation. This was urgent. Here's where Sharon reveals something extraordinary about who she is as a person. Most people, hearing those words from a doctor, would collapse into fear, understandably. But Sharon looked at her doctor and said flat out, "I don't have cancer." The doctor pushed back. "You don't get to decide that." She fired right back. I do get to decide that. I'm deciding. Now, this isn't denial or delusion. This is a woman who deeply knows her own body and refuses to be controlled by fear. But she also wasn't reckless. She ultimately chose to go ahead with surgery, not because she surrendered to panic, but because, in her own words, she was not fee-king around. She was making an intentional, informed choice entirely on her own terms. There's a big psychological difference between reacting out of fear and choosing from a place of clarity. Sharon was firmly in the second camp. And then came the moment that shattered everything. When Sharon told her husband about the recommended surgery, he didn't reach for her hand. He didn't say, "Whatever you need, I'm with you." He didn't even sit quietly in the difficulty of the moment. He said, "This is ridiculous," and stood up and left the room. Let that land for a second. His wife was facing a potential cancer diagnosis. A doctor had just told her she might need both breasts removed, and his reaction was to dismiss it entirely and walk out. When podcast host David Bigno asked what exactly was ridiculous about it, Sharon didn't hesitate. Her husband was furious about the bilateral mastectomy, not devastated at the thought of losing her to cancer, furious about what her body would look like afterward. The doctor, to his credit, turned to the husband and said, "If I had more patients like her, we'd have more women alive today. You need to sit down." And Sharon looked at her husband and said, "I make the decisions, not you." Sharon described what followed with almost painful simplicity. That was the end of the marriage. That was it. He was done with me then. It was over. You could just tell. It was just over in the room. He thought she was ridiculous. He thought she was foolish. And most revealingly, he thought she was making too many decisions herself. That last line is the entire story. This wasn't really about a medical disagreement. This was a man who fundamentally could not accept a woman owning her body, her choices, and her life completely. The moment Sharon stepped fully into her own autonomy, he checked out of the marriage. She didn't leave because he panicked or misspoke in a scary moment. She left because in the most vulnerable moment of her life, she saw clearly who he was, and who he was simply could not love the woman she needed to be. Sharon and Phil Bronstein, officially divorced in 2004. Here's the twist that makes the whole story even more layered. Her tumors turned out to be benign. No cancer, no mastectomy needed after all. But even that came with another painful violation. When she had surgery to remove the tumors, her surgeon allegedly gave her larger breast implants without her consent, something she spoke about publicly in 2021. So in one single medical chapter, Sharon Stone faced a cancer scare, a husband who cared more about her appearance than her survival, and a doctor who altered her body without permission. And yet, she's still here, thriving at 68, telling her story loud and on her own terms. What her story really teaches us has nothing to do with celebrity gossip. It's about what happens the moment you choose yourself, your health, your autonomy, your dignity, over someone else's comfort and approval. That's not ridiculous. That's not foolish. That's courage. Drop in the comments. What would you have done in her position?